I used to think heartbreak had a limit, that once you caught the person you loved in someone else's arms, you hit the ceiling of pain and there was nowhere left to go. That was before I found out what she'd been doing behind my back, and long before her sister showed up at my door with a letter that turned my world on its head. My name is Samuel Rourke. I am 46, and I run Rourke Homeworks, a plumbing and renovation outfit in Alder Ridge, Colorado. My dad, Patrick, and I started the company 25 years ago with nothing more than an old toolbox and a pickup that wheezed louder than any equipment we owned. Now we operate out a 2-story shop, run 7 vans, and stay booked months in advance. My wife at the time, Elise, handled the books while I handled the work. It seemed like a solid arrangement. Until the evening, everything cracked. I had just finished a job on the north side of Alder Ridge, swapping out a string of busted hot water lines. The air had that crisp October edge that keeps you grateful to work with your hands. I was tossing the last of the tools into the back of the truck when I got a text from Elise. Working late. Big project. Don't wait up. I didn't think anything of it. Elise worked at a design firm in downtown Alder Ridge. Deadlines, new accounts, demanding clients. All normal. But she had been distant for weeks. Head buried in her phone. Jumping at every ringtone. Brushing off my questions with a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. So I drove to her office with takeout from a place she loved, thinking a surprise dinner might pull us out of the rut. Her car was in the lot, parked next to a silver Audi I'd never seen. The building looked mostly empty, except for a glow on the 3rd floor. I climbed the stairwell quietly, nerves buzzing like live wires. From a hallway, I saw her through the glass walls of a conference room. Elise stood with a man in a tailored suit. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek with the kind of easy confidence that only comes from history. She leaned in. He kissed her, and she kissed him back like it was the most natural thing in the world. My hand shook so hard that the food bag nearly slipped from my grip. I snapped a picture because I needed proof this wasn't a stress dream. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. I spent that night in a roadside motel north of town, staring at my phone until the screen went dim. By morning, something inside me had settled. Not calm, not forgiveness, just a grim certainty. I drove straight to my father's place. Dad had weathered his own storms, including my mother walking out when I was 13. If anyone knew what to do, it was him. He listened, his jaw tight, then said the simple thing that changed everything. You gather facts. You build your case. And you don't strike until you know exactly where to hit. That was Dad. Plain, sharp, and usually right. I followed the man from the design firm the next day, tracked his car to a high-rise complex. A name on the mailbox told me who he was. Leonard Hale. A week later, while Elise was in the shower, I finally did what I had never done in 16 years. I went through her purse. Inside, I found receipts for fuel stations across the county, dinners I'd never been invited to, and a business credit card I didn't know existed. When she left for work, I headed straight to the bank. That was the day I learned Elise had been siphoning money out of Rourke Homeworks in small, steady cuts. Not enough to set off alarms, but enough to bleed us over time. $21,000 in 6 months. Maybe more before that. My son, Julian, from my first marriage, was the one I called next. He was studying finance at the university. He met me that night at a diner, took one look at the statements, and said, "Dad, this is fraud." Straight up. From there, things moved fast. I hired an attorney, then a private investigator. The investigator, a quiet man named Walt, had his own folder of information on Leonard Hale. It turned out he wasn't just charming. He was calculated. A man who targeted married women, especially those with access to money. I wasn't the first husband caught in his wake. 2 weeks later, Walt handed me an envelope that left no room for doubt. Photos, records, emails. Elise had been funneling money directly to Leonard's shell accounts. They had close to 40 grand hidden away. The divorce was messy but controlled. She gave up rights to the business, agreed to a limited custody arrangement with our 7-year-old daughter, Nina, and signed a restitution plan to avoid criminal charges. I thought that was the end of it. 6 months after the dust settled, Nina and I moved into a small house on the west end of Alder Ridge. Quiet street, good yard, and all mine. Julian joined the business full-time, and Rourke Homeworks began thriving in a way I hadn't expected. Life was steady, manageable, even hopeful. Then one morning, my ex-wife from years before, Andrea, showed up unexpectedly. She had an envelope in her hands and a look that told me something heavy was coming. She explained that Elise had a sister she'd never mentioned, a woman named Mara, a sister who had been trying to reach Elise for months. According to her, Elise and Leonard had disappeared right after the divorce was finalized. Apartment emptied, accounts wiped clean, phones dead. Mara had hired a private investigator. What she found pointed to something darker than two people running away with stolen money. Weeks later, Mara arrived at my door in person, eyes hollow, hands shaking. She told me they found Elise's body in a reservoir outside Denver. The authorities called it suicide, but the autopsy in the investigator's report told a different story. Elise had water in her lungs, but she also had bruising consistent with a struggle. And there, in the envelope Mara handed me, was a letter from Elise addressed to me, a confession, and a warning. She wrote that Leonard had grown violent when she tried to leave him, that he threatened to hurt me and Nina unless she kept paying him. She said she had drawn him away from Alder Ridge on purpose, planning to disappear so he would never find us. She said she was terrified, and she begged me to protect our daughter. Mara wanted help proving Leonard killed her sister. I agreed without hesitation. It took 6 months of digging, cooperation from Leonard's previous victims, and some relentless investigation from both Mara and Walt. Leonard was finally arrested in Nevada, charged with murder and a web of financial crimes across multiple states. During the trial, he admitted that Elise had tried to expose him. He panicked. He forced her into the reservoir. He left her there. I never told Nina everything. One day she will be old enough to know. For now, she only knows that her mother made mistakes, but in the end tried to protect her family. Sometimes the truth has to come in small doses. Life didn't fall apart after that. Somehow it grew. Julian and I expanded the business. We hired new staff, won larger contracts, and worked side by side the way Dad and I once had. Mara visits once a month, making sure Nina knows she has another piece of her family out there. A gentle, steady presence. And then there is Emily, the school counselor who lives down the street. What started as small conversations at pickup time has become something warm and welcome. Nina adores her. I do too, if I'm honest. Some evenings I sit on the back deck with a cold drink, watching Emily and Nina plant bulbs in the little garden by the fence. The sun dips over the Colorado foothills, and for the first time,